Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back in lecture number 30. Today we are going to revise what we studied in lecture number 12 to lecture number 16. And our today's topic will be of modes of financing, that is Salam, Istisna. One of the modes of financing we studied already, that was Murabha in our previous lecture. And now we will revise Salam, Istisna, Musharaka, Mudarba and diminishing Musharaka. So as you know that Salam is a transaction where the payment is made at the spot and the commodity, which is the subject matter of the sale, will be delivered in the future. So this is against the valid sale contract, but this is an exception to a valid sale contract under the Sharia, because for a valid sale contract the seller must possess and seller must be the owner of that asset. But in this case, the seller which has not produced the goods which are the subject matter, for example, this mode of financing is specially designed for the farmers. So the farmers, when they grow their crops, only then they can sell it to the market. But in this case, this is an advanced selling of the crops or of the commodities which have not yet been grown. So here the farmers, they are paid at the spot for a deferred delivery of the subject matter of the sale. So the definition would be: a sale transaction is the purchase of a commodity for the deferred delivery in exchange for immediate payment. It is a type of sale in which the price, known as the Salam capital, is paid at the time of contracting, while delivery of the item to be sold, known as subject matter of Salam, is deferred. And it has its uses. It can be applied for the purchase of commodities, financing for production of agricultural commodities or minerals. So you see, the beauty of this transaction is that farmers, they get in advance some capital which they can use to grow their crops. And if they have some capital in advance, they can use that capital to timely grow their crops and to use fertilizers to get more crops. So this is a beneficial tool for both the seller and the buyer. And it also accommodates the liquidity requirements of the sugar mills. And it has its different applications, particularly when you go to the countryside. We have some rice mills. They pay the farmers in advance and they book their crop, and whatever crop the farmers they grow, they have to sell that crop to that rice mill. And likewise the sugar mills, they also purchase for the advance payments. And the wisdom of allowing Salam is that it is beneficial for both seller and the purchasers. Seller or the farmer can get capital to grow the crop and get better produce of the crop, while the buyer can be sure of its stock and price. So the benefit of the buyer is that the buyer, they can purchase the goods and they can be sure of their stocks. For example, the rice exporters, they can be sure of their stock as well. And likewise the sugar mills, they can be sure of their stock as well, because they have made advanced purchases of their raw materials. And also the traders, when they involve into such transaction, they can purchase at a lower price, but when they receive the commodities after a certain time period, they can sell those commodities in the market and they can realize some profits as well. And there are some problems, like the risk of default by the seller. Now the seller has been paid the price, and if the seller goes default, this is one of the risks. And banks need to liquidate goods after delivery. So when the bank is the buyer here, then bank's main business is finances, and the banks, they don't deal in commodities. So here the banks, they have to get rid of this commodity because they don't have any warehouses where they can store such kind of commodities. So they have to arrange certain mechanisms, and this is a kind of market risk for the bank. And the seller's inability to produce or procure commodity. And the third risk is that seller did try to produce the commodity, but because of certain reasons, maybe because of some disasters, because of some rains, floods, the farmers, they could not grow their crops. So these are the risks involved into such transaction. And this is an exception to the possession. and it's a contract opposite to murabaha. Normally, the seller must possess the commodity, but here it is an exception. And the legitimacy has been derived from one of the Prophet ﷺ's hadith, that at his time, at Prophet ﷺ's time, people used to sell their dates in advance. They used to receive the price at the spot, and the delivery was deferred to 1 or 2 years. And Prophet ﷺ, when he came to know this practice, he said that he further endorsed it, he did not prohibited it. And the payment is full at the spot, otherwise selling debt for the debt. So the payment here should be full and at the spot, and it is allowed in fungible commodities, which are the replaceable commodities. For example, if the seller could not, if the farmer is a seller and he could not grow the crop in his or her field, then the seller should purchase the same commodity from the market and deliver it to honor the contract. So here it cannot be specified that the farmer must grow the crop in such and such field, but that commodity should be available in the market. And the fungible would mean that the replaceable commodity. For example, the currency is a fungible commodity. If you have borrowed a 1000 rupees note, you can pay it back into 500 rupees 2 notes. And same way, if you borrowed car from your friend and it has tank full of gasoline, you can return the car with tank full of gasoline, but not the same gasoline or the petrol which you received from your friend. You used the car, and when the fuel finished, you went to any petrol pump and you got the fuel tank filled. So this is a fungible commodity. And product of a particular origin cannot be specified. Quality and quantity should be decided in unambiguous terms. It means if the farmer is selling rice, for example, so there are different specifications of rice. There is basmati, there is some other kinds as well. So it should be specified clearly what kind of rice and what will be the price of it and what will be the quantity of that contract. And the commodity should remain in the market throughout the period of contract. But here the views are different, but the logic is that if the seller is unable to grow the crop in his or her own field, then the seller should purchase the same commodity from the market. So it means that commodity should remain in the market at all times. And at the same time, when the bank enters or the financial institution enters into a salam contract, and then the financial institution enters into a parallel salam contract, now if the first party, that is the seller in the salam contract, is unable to deliver the commodities at the fixed time period, then the bank in the parallel salam contract can honor the contract by purchasing the same commodity from the market. So this is the idea, that these goods should remain in the market all the time. The time of delivery should be sufficient to allow use of salam capital conveniently. So if it is to grow wheat, so wheat takes about 5-6 months. So the duration of this contract should be 5-6 months. And a security or guarantee is preferred as safeguard to the risk of default. So a security would be needed here, because there is always a risk that seller may go default, and only commodity is delivered and not the money. So here in this contract, commodity should be delivered, money is not the subject here. This is a sale contract with a deferred delivery. And the disposal of commodity at the end of bank can be through parallel salam or unilateral promise from a third party. So here the bank, when has entered into a salam contract, can enter into another contract, the same salam contract, which will be known as parallel salam contract, with a third party. And if the bank doesn't enter into a parallel salam contract, the bank may get a promise from a third party that when the commodities are received, that party will purchase the commodities maybe at that market price. The price of the commodities will be the market price at the time. And in case of parallel salam contract, in the second contract, it doesn't depend on the first contract, that first contract will be fulfilled and then the second contract will be fulfilled. This is not the case. Both contracts are independent of each other. Fulfillment of the first contract doesn't mean the fulfillment of second contract. They have to be fulfilled separately. And Both the contracts, Salam and parallel Salam, must be independent of each other. Parallel Salam is allowed only with the third party. It should not be related party with both the seller and the buyer. And the third party giving unilateral promise should not pay the price in advance, as this is not allowed in Sharia. And this is the structure of Salam and parallel Salam contract. So in the first place, you can see that in a Salam contract, bank is a buyer. So there is a contract between the bank and the seller. So in the first place, bank makes the payment for the deferred delivery of the subject matter of the sale. And in the second contract, bank is a seller and there is a buyer. This buyer may be another bank and this may be any other party. So here the bank receives the payment, receives the price right away, and the delivery is deferred, and the time duration of a Salam contract and the parallel Salam contract is of course different. Parallel Salam contract will be signed after the Salam contract, so the duration in parallel Salam contract is shorter and price will be higher than in the case of Salam contract. And now Istisna. Istisna is somewhat similar to the Salam contract, but here the subject matter, that is the commodity, it needs manufacture. So every asset that needs manufacturing can become the subject matter of sale in case of Istisna. Istisna can be used for different purposes. It has its huge applications, particularly in the construction industry. And its definition is that it's an order to producer to manufacture a specific commodity for the purchaser. And the subject of Istisna is always a thing that needs manufacturing, and manufacturer uses his or her own material. Quality and quantity should be agreed in absolute terms. Purchase price should be fixed with mutual consent. And the price of Istisna can be paid at the spot, but it can be paid after some time in the lump sum payment, or it can be attached to the stages of manufacture. For example, if the 10% of manufacturing has completed, the 10% of the payment will be made. So likewise, with the manufacturing stages, payment can be associated. And price of Istisna can be in the installments, and installments can be tied up with the stages of manufacture. And when the required goods have been manufactured by the manufacturer, purchaser can exercise his right to reject the goods based on the defects in the manufactured goods. So if the manufactured goods, they don't qualify the terms and conditions of the contract, that is the specification and the quality which was mentioned into the contract, they are not same. So in that case, the buyer can reject and can cancel this contract. The contract of Istisna can be cancelled unilaterally before the manufacturer starts working. So both the parties, before the manufacturing starts, they can unilaterally cancel the contract. And after starting the work, Istisna contract cannot be cancelled unilaterally. It may be cancelled with mutual understanding, but no party can cancel this contract unilaterally. And there are certain differences between Istisna and Salam. The subject of Istisna is always a thing which needs manufacturing, whereas the subject can be anything that can be grown, that can be manufactured. And the price in Istisna doesn't necessarily need to be paid in full in advance, whereas in Salam, price is paid at the spot at the time of contract. And time of delivery doesn't have to be fixed. In Istisna, time of delivery of the manufactured goods is not fixed to a particular date, but it can be for a particular time period. For example, during the month of December, maybe during the month of March, like that. And time of delivery is an essential part of the sale in case of Salam contract. And in the Istisna, the contract can be cancelled before the manufacturer starts working. But in case of Salam, when the contract has been signed, price is paid at the time of contract, the contract cannot be cancelled. And the security in the form of guarantee, mortgage or hypothecation may be required for Istisna in order to ensure that manufacturer shall deliver the commodity on the agreed rate, because goods will be delivered in future and the payments are being made maybe at the spot or maybe with the stages of manufacture. But when the goods are not delivered, so this is a risk. So to counter that risk, certain securities can be asked from the manufacturer. And in the case of default in delivery, the guarantor may be asked to deliver the same commodity, and if there is a mortgage, the buyer can sell the mortgage property, and the sale proceeds can be used either to realize the required commodity by purchasing from the market, or to recover the price paid in advance. And the time of delivery is not fixed in case of istisna. So in case of istisna, this is not necessary to fix the time of delivery. However, the purchaser may fix a maximum time for delivery. After the appointed time, he will not be bound to accept the goods and pay the price. So if the time duration is supposed the goods should be delivered during the month of December, it doesn't mean that goods should be delivered on 1st of December or 31st of December, any day of December. But after December, this is a limit. So after December, the buyer may refuse to take the delivery, and they may may cancel the contract. And in order to ensure that the goods will be delivered within the specified period, some modern agreements of this nature contain a penalty clause to the effect that in case the manufacturer delays the delivery after the appointed time, the price shall be reduced by a specified amount per day. So this is a mechanism designed by the scholars that if the manufacturer delays the delivery beyond a certain limit date, then for every delayed time period, a price can be deducted. For example, if the order was to produce geysers to the manufacturer, so geysers are highly required in the market during the winter. So the time limit was set that the manufacturer will deliver the geysers during November. So it means that after November, when the winter is at its peak, people will be buying geysers, heaters, things like that. So if it is delayed after November, it means the sales are dropping for the buyer. In that case, buyer may reject to take the delivery of those goods, and there is another option that buyer may reduce the price of those geysers, maybe per unit, or out of the total price of the contract, a certain percentage will be reduced every day. And this is one of the mechanisms to make the manufacturer bound to fulfill or to honor the contract. And before delivery, goods will remain at the risk of the seller. So this is natural. Whoever is possessing the goods physically will have the risk. And after delivery, risk will be transferred to the purchaser. Possession of goods can be physical or constructive. Transferring of risk and authority of use and utilization or consumption are the basic ingredients of constructive possession. So constructive possession, as I have explained earlier, that when the person who is having constructive possession has the potential to use that property or to benefit from the use of that asset, this is called the constructive possession. And if the manufactured goods are delivered before agreed date, the purchaser can refuse to accept the goods. And after the execution of istisna agreement with one party, buyer and a seller executes another istisna agreement with a third party. So just like in case of parallel salam contract, a parallel istisna contract can also take place, but with a third party. In case of istisna contract, client approaches the bank for the construction of certain goods. So suppose that the client approaches bank for the construction of, suppose, furniture. So in that case, bank doesn't have the specialization to manufacture the furniture, but bank will enter into an istisna contract with the client with the intention that bank will get the furniture manufactured by some third party and will deliver the furniture to the client. And then in the second contract, in the parallel istisna contract, bank will enter into a contract with the manufacturer. So here the manufacturer of the furniture will be the third party. So the bank will charge a price from the client, and then bank will purchase the same furniture or get it manufactured according to the required specification of the client from the manufacturer. So this is an istisna contract, and this is a parallel istisna contract. And in both cases, bank will earn the difference of price. The price which is in the first contract, that is istisna contract, will be higher than the price bank will be paying to the manufacturer. So the difference will be the profit of the bank. And there must be two different and independent contracts. These two contracts cannot be tied up, and performance of one should not be subject to the other. And parallel istisna is allowed with third party only. And this figure would further elaborate the istisna and parallel istisna contract, that the buyer approaches the bank and payment the payment is according to the agreement. Payment may be at the spot, or maybe at some particular time period, or it may be linked with the stages of manufacture or any installment payment. And the delivery of the asset is deferred. And then, because bank is not a manufacturer, bank will enter into a contract with the contractor, who is manufacturer of those required commodities or the assets, and the bank will make payment according to the agreement, and then delivery will be received by the bank, and accordingly those goods will be forwarded to the buyer. So this first part is an istisna contract, and this second part is a parallel istisna contract. So here these two parties, they are independent of each other. They should not be related to each other, and the bank can be the same party, but here the other two parties should be separate, and these two contracts of istisna and parallel istisna, they are independent of each other. Suppose in case of this parallel istisna contract, the contractor doesn't manufacture the required goods and this contract is not honored. In that case, the bank must purchase those commodities from the market according to the required specification and then deliver it to the client or the buyer in the first istisna contract. So the fulfillment of this part doesn't mean that this part will be honored. They are both independent of each other, and respectively they should be honored separately. And potential of istisna is that the client can get finance for raw material, working capital and other overhead expenses by the execution of istisna agreement. The contractor, they can, or the manufacturer, they can receive the payments, they can purchase the raw materials, and the required expenses can be met out of these payments. And its applications are particularly in the home financing, import and export products can also be designed according to the istisna contract. And we can have its application in the house financing, in the construction of houses, for the project financing, maybe for the infrastructure, or for the construction of any building, any bridge or roads, things like that. And the build, operate, transfer agreements, they can also be designed according to the istisna contract. In case of export of goods, the goods before shipment can be manufactured using this istisna mode. And now one of the main features of modes of financing in Islam, and which is the spirit of Islamic financial system. And unfortunately this has not been targeted by the Islamic financial institutions, that is musharaka and mudaraba. So musharaka, as it is clear, that is kind of partnership where two or more than two people, they get together, they bring their capitals, they start any venture, and or they may purchase any asset. So if they start any business activity, that we will call as shirkatul aqd. And if they purchase any asset, we may call that shirkatul milk. And capital contribution, the main features of a musharaka contract is that capital will be contributed by all the partners, and management of the musharaka venture, then profit sharing, loss sharing and partnership venture. These are the main features of musharaka contract. So let's see what is the requirement as far as capital is concerned. So monetary assets in different currencies shall be valued based on the currency agreed by the partners in the contract. If the partners, they bring different denominations of currencies, if they bring the monetary resources, so in that case one standardized currency will be set and all the currencies will be converted into that currency, and that will determine the contribution of each partner. And all forms of debt shall not qualify as musharaka capital. If somebody has any claims or receivables, those receivables cannot be made from part of that capital. And non-monetary assets, with an associated debt may be contributed as capital. For example, if the building has been constructed and partly has been financed with debt, that is 30% suppose here, but that building cannot qualify as a musharaka capital if the debt portion is 50% or more than that. And the total amount of capital to be contributed by each partner shall be determined upfront. It will be determined upfront that which partner is bringing what amount. It shall be determined clearly. And additional capital may be injected by mutual agreement of the partners, but when the additional agreement is brought into the partnership, the profit sharing ratio will be adjusted accordingly. And failure to contribute capital by the capital provider as per agreed schedule shall constitute a breach of promise, and the partners will have the option to terminate the agreement or to revise the agreement based on the actual capital contribution. If the capital was agreed and promised by any number of the partners and they could not provide the required capital, maybe they provided only partial amounts of that, so in that case the musharaka can be cancelled, or maybe with the available contributions the musharaka can be renewed with whatever contributions has been made. And the capital invested shall not be guaranteed by any of the partners. So do keep in mind, this is one of the controversial point, as we have discussed in the Skooks as well, where the capital was guaranteed by third parties, and this cannot be guaranteed under the Islamic economic system. And any of the partners acting as agents shall be liable for misconduct or negligence to the partnership as a whole. So in a partnership or in a musharaka contract, all the partners, all the shariks, they are the agents of the business as well. So if they, because of their negligence, misconduct or breach of the terms and conditions, if there is any loss to the partnership, so in that case that partner has to compensate those losses. And any partner acting on his own or as an agent, if he causes any capital loss because of that misconduct or negligence, losses shall be compensated from that particular partner, and any loss of capital in the course of business shall be recognized as capital impairment and shall be borne by all the partners proportionately. And share of musharaka capital may be transferred to existing or third party as per the musharaka contract. Here the share of musharaka capital may be transferred to existing or third party as per musharaka contract, means that any of the partner can sell his or her share to any third party, or maybe the existing partners, they can purchase the share of that leaving partner. And the musharaka agreement may impose a condition that compels a partner to offer the redemption of the partner's share of capital to existing partners based on a certain agreed terms and conditions. So diminishing musharaka is one of the examples, that one of the partners sells the share to the other partner. So that is the case here. And the capital gains or losses will be shared by the partners. If the business value increases, the musharaka's value increases, it means it will be shared among the partners proportionately. And the same way, if there are capital losses, that will also be shared proportionately by all the partners. And the management of musharaka venture, that in a partnership, all the partners, they can become managers, and maybe the partners, they appoint a single partner as the manager, or they may hire a third person as a manager. And the profits shall be measured when we distribute the profits. This is one of the important things here, that profit shall be measured as an amount exceeding capital after deducting the costs and expenses attributable to musharaka venture. And in case where the musharaka is specified and meant for a specified project or activities, only expenses that can be identified by the partners are deemed direct expenses to the project may be deductible. And in case if it is for a particular project, the direct expenses can be deducted from such kind of musharaka. For example, there are different ventures under the musharaka. So for a particular musharaka which is going to finish within, suppose, 6 months, or if it is for a particular project, when that project completes, that musharaka will end up. So only the direct expenses can be attributed here. And the profit sharing ratio may either be proportionate to the capital contribution or be based on a ratio or percentage which is agreed upon by all partners irrespective of their capital contribution. So the profit sharing ratio can be different from the capital contributions. You can imagine that if the partner is an active partner or is acting as an managing agent, so in that case, the sleeping partners will have lesser share in the profit distribution, and the working partners, they will have greater share irrespective of the capital contribution share. For example, if A and B contributed 20,000 and 80,000 respectively to form a musharaka partnership, while B has decided not to take part in the management of the business, so A committed to the management the business of the partnership. A has committed to managing the business of the partnership. According to the first provision, the profit sharing ratio between A and B should be 20 to 80. That is the capital contribution, or 1/5 or 4/5 respectively. The ratio could be of any ratio such as 80 to 20 or 50-50 or any other arrangement as agreed upon by the parties. Apparently, it seems that the capital contribution is 20,000 and 80,000, and profit sharing ratio should be accordingly, but it can be different. It may be 50% each, it may be 80% for the partner who has contributed only 20%, and 20% for the partner who has contributed 80%. It can be agreed to any ratio. And it is not permissible to include a condition in musharaka contract that stipulates a predetermined fixed amount of profit to one partner which deprives the profit share of the other partners. So it cannot be made part of the contract that out of the profits, a certain proportion or a percentage of the capital contribution will be given to one of the partners and the remaining will be distributed among the remaining partners. This cannot be part of the contract. However, a lump sum amount of profit may be permissible if the profits are more than a certain benchmark profit. If one of the partner is managing the partnership, is working as manager as well, and now the profits exceed a certain limit. So beyond that limit, those profits can be given to that managing partner as an incentive. This is possible. And it is not permissible to express profit in musharaka in a form of percentage of capital only. That means a payment of fixed profit regardless of the actual profit realized. So it cannot be the case that the capital contribution suppose is 100,000 and 10% of that capital contribution out of the profit will be given to one of the partners. So this might look like an interest rate. So this is not allowed. This cannot be possible. And partners in a musharaka shall not fully or partially guarantee the principal and profit of an other partner. The principal amount contributed and the profits, it cannot be guaranteed by any of the partners in a musharaka contract. A third party who is not related to any party in the musharaka in terms of equity ownership and management control may guarantee the profit to the musharaka venture subject to certain conditions. So third party can provide such guarantees, and the illustration is that if a musharaka financing agreement is signed to build and rent a property to an identified tenant. So here we can imagine that if we can get the promise by a party that we construct a house or a property, and that party will use that house as a tenant and they will become a lessee into that house. In that case, we know in advance that against an investment of such and such amount, that party is going to pay such and such amount as rental. So we can know that this much percentage return is expected out of such partnership, and this will be the share of profit of each partner. Any unusual investment income from Sharia prohibited activities of musharaka venture due to unavoidable circumstances will be distributed to the charity. For example, if the musharaka capital has been invested into equity capital, the shares of some company has been purchased and that company is conducting halal business. But after some time that company shifted its business to some haram activities. So in their total income, the income sources which are not allowed in Sharia, the income also came from those sources. So in that case, the company should sell those shares back in the market, and whatever profits have been earned during that time period and the share of those haram activities, if that can be determined, it will be deducted out of that income and it will be given to charity. And capital loss incurs when a capital asset decreases in value. So in case of loss, how we will share it? If there is a capital loss, then that loss is not realized until the asset is sold for a lower price than the purchase price. When there is a capital loss, it will be realized only when the assets are sold. And loss shall be shared among the partners proportionately to each partner's capital. And preferential treatment to a particular partner over the others in the same musharaka venture in absorbing the loss shall not be permissible. For example, we cannot say that one or two or three partners, they are exempt from loss. All the partners, they have to suffer the loss according to their capital contribution. The loss to the partners shall be limited to the capital contribution of each partner, and a third party may undertake to bear the loss of a partner. In order to encourage public participation in the musharaka investment, the government may provide a guarantee to the capital of the musharaka venture. This type of guarantee is permissible and valid as the government is an independent party to the musharaka venture. So however, although it is permissible, but there is an objection to it, that government is a trustee of funds of the public. Government is not owner of those funds. So with the funds of others, you cannot use it against their wills. So the government, even they cannot provide guarantees in such cases. So this is one of the objections against the guarantees which are provided in case of capital contribution. And upon realization of loss, a partner may agree without any prior condition to bear the loss of another partner at the time such a loss is realized. So if one of the partners think that the other partner is quite poor, and this will be a huge setback if the loss is shifted or transferred to that partner as well. So in that case, one of the partner, out of virtuous act, or just to earn reward from Allah, may absorb the loss of some other partner as well. But this is not a condition. It is only a virtuous act, and it's not part of the contract. And the loss due to misconduct, negligence and breach of terms and conditions by managing partner shall be borne entirely by the partner. And the partnership venture, what kind of businesses that can be conducted out of this musharaka arrangement? Business ventures of musharaka shall be Sharia compliant and may be conducted in various sectors such as trading, plantation, construction, manufacturing, investment and services. A musharaka contract may be adopted for non-commercial activities which are non-profit oriented, and pre-contracting costs like feasibility study fee may be charged to the customer subject to his or her consent. For example, if there is a party want to become partner into a venture and the bank conducts a feasibility study for that particular business venture, so the cost of that feasibility study may be charged from the client, or it may become part of the capital contribution of the bank. Now, mudarba, as you know earlier, that mudarba is an arrangement where it is kind of partnership where the capital contribution is from one party and the efforts or the human resource contribution is from the other party. And the definition is that this is a kind of partnership between two parties where one partner contributes capital, the other contributes efforts as manager or entrepreneur. And the profits are shared according to the agreed ratio irrespective of the capital contribution. And the losses again are shared according to the capital contribution. It means the whole loss out of natural business operations goes to the capital provider. The investment comes from Rabbul Mal, while the management is the exclusive responsibility of the working partner, which is entrepreneur or mudarib. So there are a number of principles governing the mudarba contract. For example, nature of the contract, capital, management of the mudarba, profit and loss sharing mechanism. So nature of mudarba contract is that it allows any one of the contracting parties to terminate the contract unilaterally, In Mudarba contract, it is allowed for the parties that they can quit from this contract by serving the notice according to the terms and conditions mentioned in the contract. However, the contract shall not be terminated unilaterally if it is for a specified project or it is for a specific time period. After that project is completed or after that time duration passes, that partnership automatically finishes. And the capital shall be contributed by the capital provider and shall be managed by the manager to generate income. The capital of Mudarba may be in the form of monetary or non-monetary assets. So just like the capital contribution in case of Musharaka, that it can be in cash, it can be in kind. So like the building, machinery, can be anything can be contribution. And monetary assets of different currencies shall be valued according to an agreed currency at the time of signing the Mudarba contract, and mutually agreed currency shall be applicable throughout the contract period. And the capital in the form of non-monetary assets, which may include intangible assets, shall be valued based on the valuation determined by a third party or as agreed upon by the contracting parties at the time of contract. So if the capital provider or the Rabbul Mal provides capital in non-monetary sources or the tangible assets, so in that case the valuation of that will be determined by any third party agreed by both the partners, or at the time or the market value can be taken as the capital contribution. And upon termination or expiry of the contract, non-monetary Mudarba capital contributed may be redeemed at its original value invested or otherwise at its market value, but preferably the assets, they are redeemed at their market value. For example, a public transport company XYZ applied for Mudarba based financing from an Islamic bank. The bank approves the application and agrees to provide 5 buses to the company as Mudarba capital valued at rupees 10 million each, valued at rupees 10 million based on prevailing market value, and company should manage the operations of these buses. Upon the termination of the contract, Mudarba capital may be valued at its original value or the residual market value as agreed in the contract. So both are possible, that at the time when they were contributed in the contract, their market value, their value was 10 million, and if it is mentioned in the contract that their market value will be redeemed, so at the end of the contract maybe their market value is only 6 million or maybe 7 or 8, any price. And the debts such as account receivable or loans due to capital provider, they don't qualify to become capital of a Mudarba contract. And the agreed capital shall be made available to the manager to commence the business activities, and the capital may be fully or partially disbursed or made available to the manager at the time of contract or based on terms of the contract. So whenever the manager requires the capital according to the contract, it should be readily available to the manager. And the capital provider and manager may agree for a gradual withdrawal of Mudarba capital by capital provider. And again, the capital provider, they may withdraw their capital gradually, and it might take the shape of a diminishing Musharaka contract, or maybe the share of the Rabbul Mal can be sold to any third party as well. And failure to provide capital by capital provider as per the agreed schedule shall constitute a breach of promise, and it may terminate the contract. And the manager now has the option to continue that contract, or that contract may be terminated or may be cancelled at that time. So when the Mudarba contract is terminated or it is finished, so at that time the outstanding capital, which is the contribution of the Rabbul Mal, is due to that Rabbul Mal, and it should be paid back by the Mudarib. But if the liabilities of the business are more than that capital, so the Rabbul Mal will be responsible up to the capital provided by the Rabbul Mal into that particular contract. And upon liquidation or maturity of the Mudarba contract, all outstanding capital shall be returned to the capital provider, and any outstanding capital including the share of profit shall be deemed as debt due to the capital provider. And any outstanding capital plus any profit, these are the liabilities upon the Mudarib, and Mudarib has to pay that balance to the capital provider. And the manager shall not guarantee the Mudarba capital. So again, like in case of Musharaka, no partner can guarantee the capital of each other, and here again, Mudarib, which is the operating partner, cannot guarantee the capital of the Rabbul Mal as well. And the capital provider may require the manager to arrange for an independent third-party performance guarantee. And when the capital provider has provided the capital, there is a high risk that Mudarib may not use it efficiently or according to the contract. Then a guarantee may be asked from the Mudarib. And the guarantee shall be executed as a separate contract and be utilized to cover for any loss or depletion of capital in the event of misconduct, negligence, dishonesty, fraud, or breach of the terms of the contract by the manager. So just to make sure that manager will perform according to the spirit of that contract, and that guarantee will be utilized to cover for any losses arising out of any misconduct, fraud, or negligence by the Mudarib. In management of the Mudarba, now the Mudarba is of two types, that is restricted Mudarba and unrestricted Mudarba, and I think that will come in the later slide. And Mudarba capital will be used only for the Sharia compliant activities. It cannot be used for any haram activity. All the activities, all the businesses of Mudarba should be according to the Sharia, and manager will have the exclusive right to manage the contract. However, the capital provider has the right to information regarding the conduct of the business of the manager. The manager, the Mudarib, has the full liberty to use the capital, but the capital provider has the right to have a look into or to observe the operations of the business and make sure they are according to the spirit of the contract. And manager shall not be liable for any loss of capital unless it is due to the negligence, dishonesty, misconduct, or breach of contract by the Mudarib. And there are two types of Mudarba. One is restricted Mudarba, the other is called unrestricted Mudarba. In case of restricted Mudarba, as it is clear from the word that there are certain limitations, there are certain restrictions for the Mudarib to perform the operations of a Mudarba contract. The powers of the manager shall be provided under the terms and conditions of the contract, and the contract may restrict the manager's role or function, such as determination of location. Location can be determined by the capital provider, and it can be limited, it can be restricted to a particular location. And the period for investment, that is, the capital may be provided for a certain time period, and after that capital must be paid back or returned to the capital provider. And type of project, what business is going to be conducted with that capital, that can also be restricted by the capital provider. And commingling of funds, if the capital provider allows the capital investment by other partners or from the Mudarib as well, then the Mudarib can ask for capital from other people or can commingle the capital of himself or herself into that Mudarba contract. And when some other partner's capital is invited into it, or the Mudarib contributes his or her own capital into the business, then it will change its nature to Musharaka contract, provided it doesn't nullify the purpose or objective of the contract. However, the restrictions shall not unduly constrain the manager. So all these restrictions should not mean that business is no more feasible. So they can be possible, but the feasibility of business should not be restricted. And in case of unrestricted Mudarba, again it's clear from the word unrestricted that there is no restriction upon the Mudarib. Wherever or whatever kind of business he wants to conduct, it is up to the Mudarib. Rabbul Mal gives full freedom to Mudarib to undertake whatever business is required. This is called unrestricted Mudarba. The manager has the discretion to use the capital in the best interest of the Mudarba. However, Mudarib is not authorized to keep another Mudarib or a partner. So in the Mudarba contract, Mudarib cannot engage any other party into this Mudarba contract and mix his own investment into this Mudarba contract. It would mean that now the nature of the Mudarba contract would change into Musharaka contract. But if the Rabbul Mal allows, only then this is possible. Otherwise, the commingling of capital is not allowed. Then there is further classification of Mudarba contract, that is single-tiered Mudarba and multi-tiered Mudarba. In a single-tier Mudarba, the idea is that the Rabbul Mal provides capital to the Mudarib, and Mudarib will utilize that capital and engage into some business activity. And this is the relationship between the Rabbul Mal and the Mudarib. This is known as the single-tier Mudarba. Whereas in case of multi-tiered Mudarba, the Rabbul Mal provides capital to the Mudarib, and then Mudarib may provide the same capital to the next Mudarib. So there will be different tiers of Mudarba. So this is allowed, and this should be with the consent of the Rabbul Mal. If the Rabbul Mal doesn't allow such type of transaction, then this is not possible. And we have multi-tiered Mudarba in different forms in the Islamic financial system. Suppose in case of bank, we see the bank is in the center, and in this capacity, bank is Mudarib. And you see, all the depositors, they deposit their funds in the bank, and they are the Rabbul Mal. And bank is the Mudarib. Bank is working as an agent, as a manager, and here the relationship between the depositors and the bank is the first tier or the single tier Mudarba. And these Rabbul Mal, they can deposit their capital in different forms, like in different types of accounts, or maybe for a particular fund. And these capital providers, they are known as Rabbul Mal, and then the bank works as Mudarib. But on the other hand, bank enters into different contracts with different parties, and you can see bank becomes the Rabbul Mal, and these parties, they are the Mudarib. So bank will make investment maybe on the Musharka basis, maybe on the Mudarba basis, but if it is on Mudarba base, then all these investments may be entered with different partners A, B, C and D. So the bank will enter into independent contracts with all these different Mudaribs, and the returns of this business according to the share of the bank will be deposited or will be given back to the bank. Now the bank has provided capital and earning profit or losses against these investments. And out of these profits which the bank receives, so according to the first contract, the bank may deduct the managerial, the fee, maybe the managerial fee, or we may call it a wakala fee, and bank may charge a Mudarba partnership, the bank may deduct a percentage of profit which is received from the second tiered Mudarba, and out of this profit, bank would keep certain amount for his or her own its own administrative expenses, and the remaining will be distributed among the depositors. So this phenomena is known as the two-tier Mudarba. And in Islamic financial system, this arrangement is not only in case of banks, the depositors into the banks, and then the clients of the bank for different modes of financing. It can be in the form of different funds as well. For example, when we talk of Mudarba fund, the banks, they are the financial institutions, they announce different types of fund, as we have discussed them in the Islamic investment funds. And in that case, the investment is invited from all over the world, and the depositors, they deposit their funds into that particular fund, and there is a relationship of Rabbul Mal and Mudarib. The fund manager, which is normally a financial institution or a bank, works in the capacity of a Mudarib. Now the suppliers of that fund, they are the Rabbul Mal, and in their capacity, they are partners into that fund. There is a Musharka contract, maybe we can call it. And the profits will be shared according to the capital contribution by all the capital providers. And then the next relationship with the fund manager is Mudarba based. The profits will be shared between the Rabbul Mal and the financial institution. And then that financial institution will use those funds for different activities. But if it is a Mudarba fund, then the bank will supply those funds to different entrepreneurs, to different managers on Mudarba contract, on Mudarba based contract. And again, the shape will be the same as we discussed in this case of bank. So for different types of funds, the fund managers, they will take the central stage, and there will be the first tier mudarba from all these fund suppliers with the fund manager, and the fund manager will have the second tier mudarba with all these managers where the investments are made by the funds. So this is the multi-tiered mudarba concept. And then distribution of profit and loss. So as we mentioned earlier, profits can be distributed and according to the agreed ratio, but the loss will be according to the capital contribution. So in case of mudarba, 100% capital is provided by the Rabbul Mal. So the loss, if it is out of natural course of the business without any misconduct or negligence by the mudarib, so that loss will be compensated or will be recovered from the capital contributor, that is the Rabbul Mal. And apart from the agreed proportion of the profit, the mudarib cannot claim any periodical salary or a fee or remuneration for the work done by him for the mudarba. The mudarib and Rabbul Mal cannot allocate a lump sum amount of profit for any party, nor can they determine the share of any party at a specific rate tied up with the capital. So as we mentioned earlier in the case of Musharaka as well, that no rate can be tied up for the return or for profits with the capital. It will constitute interest. So interest element is not allowed. And how the mudarba contract is terminated. Mudarba can be terminated at any time by either of the two parties. Both the parties, they can quit from this contract by serving due notice, but if it is for a particular time period, then after that time period, that contract automatically finishes. And if mudarba is for a particular term, it will terminate at the end of that term. And termination of mudarba means that mudarib cannot purchase new goods, or mudarib cannot involve into any further business activities. However, the existing assets which were purchased before the termination of the contract will be sold later on. And there is concept of collective mudarba, that it means a giant pool created by many investors, as we discussed in the case of Islamic investment funds. When the funds are created or joined together to make a pool of fund for the investment in the case of in the form of mudarba contract, so that will be known as mudarba fund. And collective mudarba creates two different relationships, that is relationship between the investor and between themselves and with the mudarib, and the relationship of all the investors with the mudarib, that is between themselves they are partners, and with the mudarib there is a relationship of Rabbul Mal and the mudarba. So musharaka and mudarba, two relationships, they take place in this case. And in case of running mudarba, it means a fund manager is managing that fund, and the people, they come and they go. They come and they join into that pool of fund. They purchase a share into that pool of fund, and when they want to quit, they can sell their share to the existing partner or to any third party. Now the diminishing musharaka. So as the word says, that share of one partner diminishes over time. So this is a kind of partnership where one partner promises to purchase the share of the other partner. And again, this is of two types, just like in case of musharaka contract, that is shirkatul aqd, that is known as joint venture, and shirkatul milk, which we call as joint ownership. So, and in case of diminishing musharaka, there are certain features. For example, in case of shirkatul aqd, two partners start business in shirka to earn profit. One of the partner undertakes to purchase the share of another over a time period, and there will be an agreement of joint venture between the two partners when they invest their capitals into that business. And this promise, there is a promise by one partner to purchase the share of the other. So this is not part of the contract in this case. This is a separate promise, and it will be kept separate because we cannot combine two contracts for one subject matter. And the price of the share of the selling partner, of the partner who is selling his or her share, those prices will be determined on the market basis if it is a joint venture. And if it is a joint ownership, it will be according to the capital contribution. And if the other party doesn't fulfill its promise, then it can be enforced through the court of law. And at the time of purchase, the price of unit will be decided on the basis of market value of the business, and conditions of valid sale transaction must be observed. That is, each time a share is sold to the purchasing partner, the value of that share will be determined according to the market value, and there will be an offer and acceptance, and then a valid sale transaction will take place. And unit will be purchased through the offer and acceptance to make it a valid sale transaction. Two or more partners purchase any asset, machinery or property, and their intention is that one of both partners will use the asset and rent out the share, and one partner undertakes to purchase the share of the other gradually. So in this case, what we have studied before as well, that if both the partners they agree to construct a house, in that case both partners they are owner of that house, and one of the partner becomes client to lease that house, and the share of the bank normally is leased out by the client. So here the share of one of the partner is leased by the other partner. And in case of joint ownership, two or more than two partners they join together and they purchase an asset, and one of the partners will purchase the share of the other partner, and the price of the share is agreed at the time of the contract. And at the same time, during their ownership continues, one of the partners they can rent out their share if they can rent it out separately. But in case of the property which is not divisible, like a house, so the one of the partner takes the share of the other partner on rent, and it is also possible that both of the partners they can rent out their share to any third party. And so that there will be a separate contract which is a contract of ijara, and within period of ijara, Sharia rulings relating to ijara contract will apply into this contract. The only difference in Shirkatul Aqd and Shirkatul Milk is that in case of Shirkatul Aqd, the unit price is determined according to the market price. But in case of Shirkatul Milk, where there is a joint ownership into any asset, the unit price can be agreed at the time of contract, and it means that whatever is the contribution of one of the partners, suppose the bank, that contribution can be divided into different proportions, and that will be known as the unit price. So that unit price will remain same throughout the contract period. But there are certain literature available that they suggest that even in case of joint ownership, market value should be the price of the unit. And the termination of diminishing musharaka subject to agreement or by mutual consent of the joint owners. A joint owner may withdraw his share from the joint asset or property after serving a due notice to the other joint owners. If there are more than two partners, the living partner can sell his or her share to the existing partners, or it may be sold to the third partner. And the withdrawal can be effected by sale or gift to the existing partner, or by selling it to the existing or to the third party. And withdrawal of one or more joint owners shall not lead to the termination of joint ownership among the remaining partners. The remaining partners, they can continue to be the partner into that asset. And it is also permissible for the joint owners to agree on termination of the joint ownership before the agreed period. So if the joint ownership and asset is for a certain time period, maybe for 1 year, but they can sell that asset even before that, and they can quit from this partnership with mutual consent. And there are different applications of diminishing musharaka, particularly in the house financing. And we have discussed different modes of house financing, that is purchase of house. The Islamic financial institution finances the client to purchase the house, and then construction of the house, renovation of the house, and there is a balance transfer facility. So the only difference between the balance transfer facility and the other modes is that in case of house financing, Islamic banks they provide finances to the client to purchase the house, or to construct the house, or to renovate the house. But when the client has got loan from the conventional bank to finance the house, so in that case, that client is paying interest, which is not allowed. So to help that client get rid of that arrangement, the Islamic financial institution can offer this facility to the clients by making payment of the remaining balance to the conventional bank, and that payment will determine the share of the Islamic Bank into the ownership of that particular asset. And other conditions, terms and conditions, they are same. So let's discuss one of that, financing for purchase of house. The client in the approved area of the bank makes a choice of house if it is for the purchase of a house, and it cannot be that the client can go to any area and can choose a house, but only in the allocated areas or the approved areas of the bank the client can select a house for purchase. And bank and client enter into a musharaka agreement, and in this agreement it is decided to purchase the house jointly and ratio of investment by each other. And the ratio of investment will be decided that how much will be the contribution of client and how much will be the contribution of the bank. And the property will be in the name of the client, and this is a shirkatul milk, this is a joint ownership. And according to the ratio of ownership, each one is responsible for the loss, and bank divides its own part of asset into units. Now the bank will divide its own share into units, and the client will promise to purchase those units of ownership of the bank according to the specified time period as per agreement. And after taking possession of the house, bank rent out its share to the client by execution of ijara agreement. Now there is an ijara agreement, and the rent may be fixed on prevailing market rate or with mutual consent. Now the rent of that house will be determined, and it will be with the mutual consent or it can be taken from the market rates. And the client which will be using that house will make payment of the rental income of the rental amounts to the bank according to the bank's ownership. Suppose if the rent amount is 20,000 and bank's ownership is 50%, so then 50% of 20,000, that is 10,000, it will be given to the bank every month. And when the units are purchased by the client and the ownership goes to 60% and 40%, so accordingly the share of the bank into the rent will also decline. And bank's monthly profit may also be decided, because the rental income is determined for a particular time period. The rents, they are fixed for the ijara contract time period, so the bank can determine what will be the profit against such and such investment. And in ijara agreement, a lump sum amount of rent is necessary to be fixed for a certain period. Rent for the rest of the period may be linked with agreed benchmark. So the rent can be renewed at some time period, maybe for after 1 year or after 2 years, or it may be agreed at any time period. The rents can be renewed, but it cannot be associated to the daily indicators. Like we cannot associate with the consumer price indexes, or that it should increase on daily basis with the inflation rates, things like that. But at the renewal time, we can refix the rental income according to the market rates, or maybe according to the appreciation in the market value of that asset. And each unit will be purchased on the basis of offer and acceptance. In this lecture, we revised our lectures from 12 to 16, and we covered the topics of salam and istisna, and then musharaka, mudarba, and diminishing musharaka. I hope you could better understand the ideas what we have discussed in the previous lectures as well. So inshallah, see you in the next lecture. Till then, assalamu alaikum.